The simplest rule in the world is I just hire people that I like. That's like my gauge. If we're having an interview and you're telling me other things you can do and how good you are at this and that, but I don't like you, I'm not going to hire you, because that's what matters more. Is like, I got to go every day and deal with this person, and so do all of my employees. And so I don't really care how good you are at your job. If you're a jerk or unreliable or anything else, I'm not interested. I'd rather have someone who's completely incompetent but easy to get along with, that I can train, someone that's somewhat malleable. I'm not hiring for skills and talent. I'm hiring for potential. And so I actually had a pickup truck, and I would just go to construction sites and clean them up, take it to the dumps. And then I kind of started doing that more and more. Eventually, got a few dump trucks, while I was in college. And by the time I graduated, I had 10 trucks and about 15, 20 guys working for me, just doing hauling, basically trash hauling. And that, eventually sort of transformed. Eventually contractors are saying, hey, I'd like for you to do some demolition here. And so eventually I got a demolition license, because in the States, you can't do contracting work over $500 without a license. So I got a demo license, and then I got a Bobcat, and then eventually a loader and an excavator. And then the trucks kind of got bigger, and eventually it was, transfers, end dumps, dumpster service. And so that kind of just grew over time really naturally. And it was just a really good fit for me. I just enjoy it. I love being outside. I love working with my body. The construction industry was a really good fit. Eventually my body started to break down, and that's sort of a whole nother story of why I ended up where I am now. Yeah,
we'll get to that, because there's an interesting angle on that. But is there a history of construction in the family?
It skipped a generation. So my grandfather was, he was construction. He did foundations mostly. And then obviously my father worked a lot with him on sites. They were in Los Angeles, doing sort of odds and ends type of construction. But my dad ended up being selling stationery supplies. So he did pens and pencils and paper and things for businesses. And so that didn't sound like very much fun to me. And so tractors did sound like fun. So that's the direction I went. Yeah.
But you definitely have, or so it looks pretty much from the outside looking in, that you had this entrepreneurial sort of spark within you, and no matter what you were going to do, some part of it was going to be on the business side, and not just. And I see a lot of where tradespeople become really good tradespeople first, and then they fall into the business side of things. But it looks like you were destined for the business side of things.
Somewhat, like we talked about sort of my transformation. The first 7 years was probably more typical of, running the business the way a lot of guys do, which is, just trying to keep your head above water, which is, getting your staffing and organization and financing and, pulling permits and doing bids and sort of everything. Yeah. And, and we can talk about sort of what happened. I had a pretty bad accident that made it so I couldn't be in the field and had to sort of find a different way to run the business. And that was very transformational to me. And I think that set me more on what, I guess, the journey to entrepreneurship from being a business owner.
Yeah. No, I get that. But was there a military background as well? I think there was you had some time served as well, hadn't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was in the 90s. So for 3 years, I wanted to get some money for college. And so I went in, I was stationed in Germany and deployed to Bosnia, and then got out in 1999 when I was 22 years old. I had a stint of living in my car trying to figure out how to do or what to do next. And so that was my landing.
How does one get drafted into the US Army in that regard? You just
there's no drafting. You just sign up. I didn't. Well, a lot of friends were going to college, and I thought, well, that sounds really expensive, and I don't think I can afford that. And so I was kind of working in a restaurant. I just wasn't really doing much it was like probably for a year after I got out, and I just thought, I just need to do something different and shake things up, and so I joined there. Wow. And I ended up getting a lot out of it. But
oh my God, what was your parents thinking when you said, yeah, by the way, I'm heading off to Bosnia, which is probably under fire at the time, back in the day?
Yeah. So, their teenage son was, heading overseas to be, in another country for 3 years. And so it's obviously hard for parents. We were a pretty close family. The Bosnia thing, back then, that was Operation Joint Endeavor. And so it was sort of a collaborative effort across many nations to stop the genocide from Serbia. And it was it wasn't like a lot of the wars that are going on now. It was more like a peacekeeping mission. And so, it wasn't as dangerous as what these guys deal with now. And so, so it wasn't like a whole lot of trauma, but it was seeing, sort of what the other side was and, how life could be, and that people are people, and lots of great lessons that were learned there.
So, you spent 3 years in that. So what proportion of that time was overseas out of those 3 years? Like, was it every year, a couple of months at a time?
No, the whole time. Well, I did my training here in the U.S., so in Texas and Oklahoma, and then as soon as I finished my training, I went to Germany, and so I was stationed in Bavaria, in Kitzingen, in a town Kitzingen, and then had a 6-month deployment from there. So the deployments back then were only 6 months. I think they're a year now. Yeah. So it was great. I really, really enjoyed it. I mean, it opened my eyes to a much larger world, just because I was sort of I grew up hunting and fishing and backpacking in the mountains of Northern California. So I had my world was very, very small. And so that was a great experience for me.
Yeah, I've worked with a lot of ex-military people, and even today within our own business. And there's definitely an edge about them in terms of how they go about doing things. Very methodical, very detailed, very disciplined, obviously. But there's nothing in the way. I always got that there was always a way, a solution, like nothing, there was no barriers. So for example, if I said to one of them, look, we've just got a job in Sweden, but you need to be over there Monday. Oh, okay, no problem. It's like, I
guess you want to desensitize yourself to struggle to an extent, and so the military does that. You have to be flexible. You have to let somebody else sort of dictate where you're going to go and when you're going to wake up, and realize like how bad a job can really be. I don't think there's a worse job than, at least for me, than being in the military. The structure, the way that it works, the not having a say in sort of how things operate, and like seeing all sorts of like areas for improvement, for efficiencies, and it just doesn't matter. And so to me, it was a bit of a frustrating experience. It was not a great job, but it was a great experience.
Yeah, and so the self-development out of that would have been how to give up control.
Well, I mean, I guess you learn, when to react, how to react, and what's going to serve you and what's not going to serve you. So going in and just being like, going to your sergeant and telling him what you really feel does not work out for you. And so, instead you learn to sort of navigate, difficult situations. And so, it was good. Overall, it was a great experience for me.
So, okay. So, you come back, you obviously get into the construction sector, you've got all the tools, starting to build. It sounds like things are starting to build for you. And like, would you be regarded like in terms of scale as in a small to medium enterprise, or where were you at in terms of revenue turnover?
Yeah, I mean, I was still in the mid 7 figures, so not a huge business, but from over the course of a few years, after getting out of the military and starting from living in my car to that was that was the best that I could do. And I built quite a profitable company too. In addition to the trucking excavating company, I also had like a bunch of recycling centers. So it was a separate business, and so I did electronic recycling and we did appliance recycling, and so it was sort of a natural fit. And then eventually we had like a division where we did property preservation, which was like when the whole housing market crashed in 2007, 2008. We were doing stuff, fixing homes,
going in, fixing it up, and getting it ready.
And so there was sort of a lot of businesses along the way that sort of sprouted off that main business.
Right. It sounds to me like you had good people around you in terms of at a strategic level. Would that be fair to say, or am I just presuming that?
So I'll say that probably not on the management side. In the early days, I didn't. But I groomed people from the bottom up. So I brought them in at very low positions and then trained them, and they became very loyal. I had very long-term employees. I always had a very hard time with hiring people who already have talents and skills, because those people are never unemployed, and if they are, they're really expensive. And so I just realized when I hired the guys on the bottom end for $20 or $25 an hour, got them on labor, stick them on a piece of equipment here and there, put them through truck driving school, and like really, really integrate them into my business. Within 2 or 3 years, I'd have a rock star employee. It's
Brilliant.
sort of it's the longer term game. A lot of these guys, they want to scale really fast. And so they only have the current available labor pool. And that's really, really tough. And so you have to poach people from other places. And in order to do that, you have to offer a lot of money. And so, so I kind of played it slow.
No, that's a brilliant strategy. Even that's so powerful that you said that, because literally only had that conversation last week with an individual, and we talked about the qualification, and he went for the superstar and the superstar didn't work out. And he was obviously, you take a hit financially, but also personally, that you've invested your time and energy and resources into this individual. And just because you buy this expertise in, if you're a certain size, it seems like it doesn't fit unless you're, you've got the buffer system because you're so big that you can, slide that person into the program and it doesn't destabilize everything. It's still the nature of the business is able to support these type of individuals. And I'm not saying that they're not useful for an organization, but I think there's a certain size of a business. If you're a small to medium enterprise and you try and shoot for the stars and get the rock stars, it actually could do more damage to your business than what you done was you said, no, why don't I educate the people to the values that I aspire to and give these guys an opportunity to better themselves?
That's right. Yeah. And it's hard too, because, you're operating on, a small, medium business, your margins are just smaller. If you're a $20 to $50 million business, you probably have larger margins and you can afford, a larger labor pool, and you're probably union. And so you're able to charge more money. And so we're not in that situation. We lost a lot of people to that. That was ultimately like my truck drivers would all want to go work for the garbage company. And, my guys that would get enough skills would want to join a labor union, and eventually I'd lose them. But, I was into people development. I am very, very happy when someone, can come work for me and then learn a lot of skills and then go and do something for a career where they support themselves and their family. And I've always kept in close contact with them. And I'm just proud to be a part of their journey. But it's also hard to keep that extra work staff on the bottom, this constant flow of people, because it's you might not need the people, but to have that extra 5% or so labor pool that are sort of gunning for the positions that are higher up as you're growing creates a little bit of competition, deleverages the people who are really good, where they're like, no, he doesn't have anybody else for my position. What's he going to do? It's like, well, when you have somebody that's coming up through the ranks, it's really motivated, young, hungry, suddenly that changes the dynamic. And so that was really an effective strategy for me.
So give me a sense of how you would differentiate yourself in terms of money, because everybody can throw training at people and say, look, we're going to send you to college and night school and stuff like that, and it's an easy, a lot of people don't do it, but it is an easy win. Do you have any sort of nuggets we could take away in terms of how to look at the individual and say, well, look, ultimately this guy has to pay for his family and loans and mortgages and debt? Did you come up with any sort of creative scenarios that you were able to put to these guys to build them up to the management level?
Well, first off, the hiring process in the beginning, I wanted them to have some of those responsibilities. I didn't have great luck with the younger guys that were single, and they just wanted to party on the weekend, have fun. I can't tell you how many times I had to bail them out of jail, and so that was a problem. But yet, the guys who were married with a young kid, really trying to establish a life, those are the guys that are motivated, and they're properly motivated. And so I would sit down with them and just ask them, what can I do to help you get to where you want to be? What are your goals? And, they say, well, I want to, I want to be in, I want to make X amount of money, or I want to, drive this equipment, or, and so, okay, let's figure out how to get there. And so, if you wanted, the big bucks, maybe you wanted to eventually get into the sales side of things, but first you got to understand the business. And so, or if you would really love just sitting on a piece of equipment and you just want a job security and, to really be a master of that, let's figure out how to do that. And so, I think it's really important to listen to your employees and also to put them in positions where they're going to thrive, and not to take employees and just make assumptions about where you should put them, because otherwise you sort of end up promoting someone to their highest sort of incompetency. If somebody is an excellent equipment operator and you make them into a team manager and they don't want to manage teams, now you've just taken somebody who is really, really good at their job and put them in a job that they suck at. That's not a good mix.
No, that's brilliant that you said that as well. And how do you then manage the sustainability of the pipeline then? So how do you create a conveyor belt type system? How do they give back then for the pipeline coming through? How did you manage that?
Yeah, I mean, they train them. This is the problem too for me. Like the way that I grew my business, it was slow and steady. And so a lot of guys that want to scale really fast, it won't work for, meaning just like slowly nurturing people through the ranks. And so I've not, been in a position where I wanted to, or, just, it was never attractive to me to scale super fast. I always made plenty of money with the business in the size it was. I mean, we're a small business.
Yeah.
And so, I'll just say that you create an environment of helpful people where, everybody wants to nurture the younger people to come in. Everybody works together as a team. Maybe you find a common enemy amongst your competitors, target them as the people that, we want to kick ass and, we're hoorah.
I've noticed that when you create those culture systems, you tend to attract like-minded people to your organization without actually having to look for them, because all these guys speak to each other. They mightn't go to trade shows like yourself, but they would see each other, at soccer games or, at the school or whatever it is, and start talking about, you see, you're in construction as well. And then they start learning that this guy's pretty similar to me. Maybe I might put him in touch with Ryan, because you're looking for a plant manager or whatever it is. I think that's very powerful.
Yeah. I only, it's the simplest rule in the world is I just hire people that I like. That's like my gauge. If we're having an interview and you're telling me other things you can do and how good you are at this and that, but I don't like you, I'm not going to hire you, because that's what matters more. Is like, I got to go every day and deal with this person, and so do all of my employees. And so I don't really care how good you are at your job. If you're a jerk or unreliable or anything else, I'm not interested. I'd rather have someone who's completely incompetent but easy to get along with, that I can train. Someone that's somewhat malleable. I'm not hiring for skills and talent. I'm hiring for potential.
Yeah, the number one rule should be don't be an asshole.
Yeah, right. Exactly. No one likes an asshole. When we start work at 4:00 in the morning, we're all getting hot and heavy, busy. We're freezing cold. Like, you've got enough issues already you're dealing with. And then some guys are just a prick. It's like, I don't want to do that. I dealt with enough of that in the military. So.
No, but I suppose part of my other business is outsourcing. And I've noticed that if when I'm vetting some of these individuals coming through, if they start talking about problems at the sort of the interview stage, like, yeah, but how am I going to get paid? And I'm not really sure about, maybe that part of the job. What I've learned is, even though that might seem very minute at that stage, at the talking stage where I haven't even offered the job or anything else, that I've red flags all over the place now. Because if they're at that point of minutia, at that stage of the whole process, what are they going to be like once you open up the door and say, here it is, this is the island?
Well, you can also tell just by when you ask somebody about their last job. So tell me about what were you doing last? Tell me the good, the bad, the ugly, and then just sit back and be quiet and listen. Yeah. And everything you need to know comes out in the next couple of minutes. I mean, it's usually, my boss was an asshole, and the people were this, and the clients were this, and you're like, all right. Cool. So the door's over there. You get, or there's the other guy that's like, I really loved the job and I loved everything about it, but I just felt like the company was sort of stale. They weren't growing. It wasn't exciting for me. Yeah. And so I'm just looking for some. Those were the kind of conversations that I wanted to have. Was people were like leaving a job not because they were bitter or anything else, because they wanted self-development. It's like, that's the guy that I want. Okay, cool. Let's develop together.
Yeah, work ethic, values, like-minded conversations and interests, and just common decency. As it might sound so simple, but you can actually work with those values, because those values can turn into bigger things when you bring the ego into the scenario. What I found is that's when you have an issue because one individual believes that everything is centered around them and who they are, and then they start poisoning or creating this toxicity within the workforce of, I wouldn't let him talk to you like that. I
Yep.
wouldn't do that. You shouldn't be doing that. You should tell him. He should know his place.
Yep, they poison the well really quickly, and it can take your company down.
100%.
Hiring the wrong person is bad. I also just the process. I'm willing to spend a lot of money to hire the right person, a lot of money and a lot of time. Meaning, I'm paying my employees to find people because they always usually bring in the best people because they're accountable to them. I'm interviewing very, very deeply. I'm hiring somebody to go out and scout for me. In the early days, it was like, okay, I go on Craigslist and just like, all right, who wants a job? And then the first person that came in my office that had his shirt on, the right side out was like, all right, you're good. And you realize it's very, very expensive to hire a wrong person. And so eventually you get to the point where you're like, okay, I need to hire really, really good people, and I can't afford to make that mistake.
I like, we're probably 20 minutes into this podcast. Give the listeners and the viewers a sense of where your businesses are at in terms of growth, overall revenue, type, size. We haven't really got a full understanding of, we've had a great discussion now about leadership and about culture and about people, but you're running a serious operation, if you don't mind me saying so, in terms of the construction sector. So give us a sense.
Yeah. My businesses are, they support me. And I spend a lot of time. So I like to ride my motorcycle. We have a motorhome. I like to go travel with my family. I like a lot of free time, and, selling my business, gave me a lot of that flexibility. So when I started the new businesses, I sort of had some requirements about it as far as how much time it would take and everything. So while I have, a lot of people that work for me and support me, and it produces, quite a bit of income for me, they're not huge businesses. And that's by design. And so, for example, Dirt Match, that company, we've got about 8,500 users, nationwide. We're moving millions of yards of dirt. It's a really helpful website that creates a ton of value in the construction space. And although it makes money, that's not really the focus. It never has been for any of my businesses. I'm always about creating a lot of value up front, and the money always follows the value. And so that one only launched about 3 years ago. And then I've got another one, a drafting company, and that one, we've been working for almost a decade on that business, and it was growing at around 40% a year up until last year. I have a regulatory issue I'm dealing with right now, so I'm in a bit of a federal lawsuit, the state of California in federal court. So that's kind of slowed down the growth a little bit, but we've done 70,000 projects. So that's it's a good business. And then obviously I do quite a bit of consulting on the side as well, for other businesses. And so I just do I really enjoy my life. I enjoy the way my businesses are structured. And anytime there's an opportunity for like if I see an opportunity for very rapid growth, but it's going to require me to work 70 hours a week for the next 5 years, I just say no, not interested. Yeah.
So, say for example, what does Dirt Match actually do? If you don't mind, if you can tell us what exactly the concept is there, or not the concept.
Sure. Yeah. So this was always a problem that we had actually in my demolition business. One of the things we did we removed a lot of swimming pools. And as a matter of fact, we took out about 300 swimming pools a year, and every one of those required about 150 yards of dirt. And so I had a person in my office who was basically my in-house dirt broker. And so we called all the construction companies, all the excavation companies, and we just told them, hey, if you guys have some dirt, call us and we'll find placement. And so there was a couple of reasons for that. One was, that we wanted those relationships. We wanted to make sure our pools were always full, but also that, when they called us to get rid of dirt, that we would put it in places where basically it wasn't competitors. And so we used dirt as a barrier of entry, sort of to create a little monopoly on pool removal. So that was it was strategic. So later on, when I sold my company, I built the software that would sort of do the same thing. It really just, connects people who have dirt, people who need dirt, and so one person is digging a big parking garage, someone else is building up a big foundation for housing development. We connect them, and so we have relationships with landfills, we have relationships with soil providers, we have so we're building it out very smartly. We are seeing deals happen almost daily now, where somebody has 50,000 yards of dirt, someone else needs 50,000 yards of dirt. Both of them are going to have huge expenses to both get rid of it and to acquire it. They connect. They basically do it free of charge. They save hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it's
no-brainer.
It's a no-brainer. Yeah, it's really it's been a really great business.
So you sit where do you sit for the commission? Is it a membership-led platform, or how do you monetize that?
Many different ways. So we have, we have obviously like a pro membership. So we have pros that, they pay a monthly fee or an annual membership fee. And then we have relationships with landfills and with dumpster providers. And so we have affiliate deals. So we make money off of those. We do dirt broker. We have a person that actually calls and just acts as a broker and brokers deals and puts them together. And for a percentage of those, we have, I created another system very much like Angie's List, because we get a lot of these people who are like, well, I have 100 yards of dirt. I'd like to find a place to get rid of it for free, but if we don't, I'd like to get an RFQ, and so a request for quote, and so to submit it. And so we looked at originally doing it more like Angie's List, where we would just sell off a bunch of leads to people, but it's such a terrible experience. So we decided to kind of turn it on its head. And so now what happens is when you submit an RFQ, we have a person on the phone, they call you, they get all the details together, and then we call out to our network to get them the best price. And so we'll go get them like 3 of the best prices, and because we get some preferred pricing. Then we send the 3 bids to the client, and if they like those bids, then they pay a percentage of the lowest bid, and then they get access to all those bids, and they can make calls on them. And if the deal doesn't go through, we give them a refund on the money. So it's basically, we go out and do the dirty work for you. And so far, that's been a pretty productive system. People seem to really like that.
Yeah, you remove the friction out of the conversation between the buyer and the seller. That's very smart.
Yeah, and also, I think that the earth has been scorched on the Angie's List thing. So when we actually started reaching out to truckers and excavators saying, hey, do you want to buy these leads? They were all like, no.
Burnt. They've been burnt.
They were burnt. And in general, even the ones that hadn't had that experience were probably a little bit more anti-technology. And so they said, okay, well, instead of using the technology solution for now, why don't we just stick a person in there and actually start making phone calls? And that might change eventually. It might go to a more systematic technology.
I'm thinking of DoorDash and Uber food, Uber Eats and all this kind of stuff like that. That's what's hitting me is like you're very similar to them within the dirt game, and it's niche.
Yeah. So the problem was that we didn't have a business model when I started this, and so it was sort of like, well, we'll just charge a monthly subscription and let everybody just connect for themselves, and it's not really how it worked, and so it's been a lot more, getting in the middle of these transactions and stuff. I'm having fun. I feel like I'm back in the industry again, but without having to do all the really hard work. I can still drive around and look at dirt, which is great.
So talk to me about that. Like, so, when it sounds like there's a great saying as well. The more time you have time to think of these things, and the more time you have to reflect on what's important, what's your priority, and how to see above the ground as regards what needs to get done or where the opportunities are. And it comes across very clear from yourself that that's the type of person you are. So
So your 7 a.m. podcast, you got in the way of my morning walk, where I usually do most of my thinking. Typically at 7, I do I'll go walk a couple of miles with kind of setting myself up for my day and thinking about what I'm doing, and that's how I organize my thoughts. And so I'll usually do a walk first thing in the morning, and then at lunchtime I walk to lunch, which is about a half a mile each way, but I like to move my legs, and then in the evening do a walk with the family. And so I probably walk 15,000 steps a day, but that's really where I get a lot of my thinking done.
Yeah.
And I've been in the position before where it's like, well, that's a waste of time. Instead of walking, I could be getting work done.
Yeah.
And it's just it's really tempting to do that because you're right. So you execute on short-term things and you get things off your plate, but long-term thinking is where your business is going to grow. And so I think a lot of people skip that part. Super important.
Yeah. And time is a very valuable quality to have or to hold or to obtain. And it sounds like you've definitely, you're on a path, I'd say, because I'm always conscious of time, and I'm always thinking of, well, how best is my time served by doing X, and what's the output going to be, and is there someone better than me that can do it quicker, faster, and more efficiently within a sort of budget.
Yeah, sure. Don't do things you hate. Yeah.
Don't do things you hate.
100%. Yeah.
But I was thinking, say for example, you come up with the next new, because it sounds like this is not going to stop for you. You're going to find something else that's going to be another niche solution for the construction industry. Do you pull together a management team to do this for you, or are you going to, do you bring yourself in as the CEO and say, right, look, how do you roll out a new company if you were to start up a new company, another dirt match type organization?
Well, I mean, I always have something in the works. So I have my businesses that I run, and then I have a lot of experiments and projects that I'm just tinkering with. And, sometimes those experiments just turn into learning experiences, which I'm okay with. And so I spend some money on them and I come away a smarter person, but it didn't work out. And then occasionally some of them hit, and those are the ones you explore on. I've got some technology solutions that I'm trying to build out right now. Right now, it's just in my head. I have a team of developers that are, kind of putting together sort of some wireframes and what it might look like. I'm very early in the process, but it's for me, it's really fun to grow things. I set my businesses up to largely run by themselves. I spend all my time doing the things that are, going to 10x my business. That's where my energy is. But all the day-to-day stuff, I have it all wrapped up and taken care of by staff, systems, and.
But it sounds like you're not in the business, you're on the business. So who's managing the business? Do you have CEOs in your current businesses that manage the day-to-day stuff, or how do you? I
have systems and good people. So one of the things when I hire people, the question I tell them is like, are you a person that requires a lot of management? Because if you are, you're going to hate this job. This is a job where we are not interested in managing people. We're looking for self-managing individuals. We run the organizations very flat, meaning everybody is responsible for their own silo. It's not layers of management and middle managers, and that's probably better when you get to a $50 million business. I have no interest in that. I want really exceptional people, and so I'm a systems person. I create amazing systems. And so if you take bad people or good people and put them in a bad system, you're going to have a terrible out result. And so I put a lot of energy into understanding what technology can make things the most efficient, like what are the systems that the person is going to work within. Once I have a bulletproof system, then I put a person into it. And that makes it so my businesses largely run themselves.
So I'm interested to see then, how does the sales process work for you? Are you a Google ads, Facebook ads type individual, or are you like a come down and shake my hand and let's have a cup of coffee or a pint down the pub?
I go wherever the customers are, and so I'm not going to let out the secrets of how I find all my customers for my businesses, but I experiment a lot with different marketing channels, so I see which ones work, and as soon as I find one that's profitable, I throw everything at it.
Yeah. Kitchen sink goes into that area. But do you have a sales department, or are you the sales department in terms of?
No. I'm not. I have salespeople. So I have like a senior salesperson that's here on the ground, out and about, and then we have some people overseas as well. I've found that I can, at least here in the U.S., there's a lot of the construction industry is Latino, and so I can hire salespeople in Latin America where they are really able to do a phenomenal phenomenal job and I can still arbitrage their labor and, they make really good money with me and I get a great outcome.
Well, you've got the execution playbook. You just need the hunter to bring them to the farmer, basically.
Somebody who's likable is pretty much good enough. I mean, because we're not cold calling. We have very warm leads coming in, and so you call them. People are happy to hear from you, and then you call the other people, and they're like, "You got work for me? We're happy to hear from you." And so, as long as you're a friendly, intelligent person, you're going to do great. And so it's a pretty low bar as far as what we require from our sales reps.
It's not a technical sale. In fairness, and
it's not. Yeah, we're not a SaaS sales company or something. No, it requires. No, this is very, very simple.
And there's a want and a need, and you found that, and you've niched that as well. So well done, you. Brilliant. I love it. What do you think is the construction industry is going into in the next 10 years? What do you see on the ground? What do you see in the industry that's going to change things either for the better or are things going to get worse? Or what's the trends in Ryan Crown Homes?
It's going to get so good. And, I sold my company a decade ago in 2014, and I've actually been looking at whether or not I should get back into it. And the reason being is that the children of the people who own these construction companies aren't going into construction. There's a huge shortage. And so the prices are really, really starting to go up. And so while a lot of these white collar jobs are getting upended by AI, the construction industry is, I think it's ripe to make a ton of money. I mean, even just for specialty contractors, if you know how to use your hands and how to manage crews. I mean, even me, I remodel houses on the side. And I stay away from the younger guys because they charge too much money. And that's because they're actually charging what they're worth. The old school guys still think that they should only, do a 35% markup. Whereas the younger guys are like, no, I'm doubling, tripling my expenses, and they're getting the work. And so I'm actually really optimistic about this space.
Yeah, definitely the supply and demand on the labor side of things is rampant across the globe. It's not unique to the States. Like definitely in Europe, we're under real pressure. The production side of things have gone that way, but the labor hasn't matched the pipeline of work.
Well, a lot of it's been like I have a college degree, and I would talk to people when I was in college, and they say, well, my dad, he slaved away in construction so that I could get a job behind a desk so I wouldn't have to do what he did. And I'm like, well, your dad was probably pretty happy working in construction. The assumption that he slaved away, it was like they were doing what they were doing to get their kids out of construction. Where if you look at what people make now after a 4-year degree, when I got my degree, I got job offers at like $35,000 a year. I was already making 6-figure hauling trash. So I'm like, why would I do that? I'm sticking with construction. And that's the case now. These people are getting these degrees and they're going out into the world, and there's not a great job market. Whereas people are getting doing a plumbing internship, and they get out and they're making $150,000 in the first year.
Yeah. I don't think to be fair, I still think that the construction industry doesn't sell itself enough to attract more people into the industry.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that creates huge opportunity. So if you're a young person who's not afraid to get your hands dirty and know how to structure and grow a business, you can do extremely well in construction. I would say over the next couple of decades, it's probably one of the best places to be.
Yeah.
Because there's so much unknown with AI, with all this new technology, but AI is not going to be able to go fix a kitchen sink or fix a plumbing or, there's technologies that'll streamline construction, but home building is still home building.
Yeah, 100%. You do a lot of talking, speaking, and you've obviously written a book as well, Ryan. So maybe you want to give us some information around that model that you have as well.
Sure. Yeah. So this was, during the whole COVID thing, I just got bored. And so I started writing a journal about, what it was that made my businesses run so well. I kind of built a name for myself for building, very solid, sustainable businesses. And so I just broke it down into, what are the things that have enabled me to do this? And so I start the book by talking about, I talked about an accident that I had earlier. So in 2007, after I'd run this business for 7 years and was doing really well, one morning I was, getting a truck to a job site, pulled up my 1-ton dually crew cab, pulling about a 10,000-pound trailer. And I get out and I lit up a cigarette and I'm chatting on the phone, and one of my guys is downloading a piece of equipment, and that truck broke free. And so I looked up the hill, and here it is rolling right towards me. I tried to get out of the way. I couldn't do it. Truck ran me over, drug me underneath it down the hill until it hit another car, jackknifed in the road. I was able to pull myself out with my one good arm, and I looked down on my femur sticking out of my jeans, and my tibia snapped in half, and I shattered my shoulder and had a hard time breathing because my lungs were punctured from my broken ribs, losing blood. Went to the trauma center, had 12 hours of trauma surgery, and then for the next 2 years, 6 more surgeries, sort of putting me back together. And so I thought for sure I was going to lose my business because, I was the everything guy, like a lot of guys are. But as it turned out, the one skill that I did have was hiring good people. And so I had, they really stepped up, my guys, and it was sort of like, what do we got to do? And they're, hey, okay, I'll pull the permits. I'll do some sales. I can do this. And they just kind of organized. And, so from the hospital bed, I'm just on my phone and we're putting it together, and I'm creating some new systems and hiring some new people, and, was able to sort of reorganize the business before I went under, because I was, pretty concerned that was going to be the end of it. I thought for sure my business was going to die. And so over these next 2 years, I went from, being out in the field, driving around and, jackhammering with the guys and, running crews the way it was, to sitting behind a computer and, understanding the marketing side of things and seeing opportunities that I wouldn't have seen otherwise. This is when I opened all my recycling centers. I just saw an opportunity. And so I went and I got a state license to open a recycling center, and we opened another one, and we started doing events all over the Bay Area, and that ended up being another profit center. Same with the property preservation company. It was about seeing opportunity. It was like, once you sit back and you're up in the grandstands looking down at the field, you're able to see so much more, as opposed to like before I was sort of the quarterback, on the field. Like I only see what's right in front of me. And so that was that was really transformational. And so that's sort of the basis of the book, was like, what were the things that I learned over these next, couple of years, and sort of walk through the process about, how I hire people, how I think of systems, how I think of finances, how I, also just some of the limiting beliefs that I had about, oh, I'm just a construction guy, or, to how much money is too much money, is like, how much, should I feel guilty about making too much money, or like, there was just a lot of things that I had to overcome so I tackle a lot of that in the book.
So the book really is the book a guide to navigating risks within business and how to overcome that, and how to sort of get some independence back for yourself?
Yep.
Oh, plug, here we go. Hustle Trap.
A how-to guide for doing less and making more with your business. So,
okay. Yeah. We'll put a link in the show notes on that. Is it on Amazon or
Yeah, Amazon. And if you want me in your ear, I've got an Audible as well. Yeah.
Brilliant. And in terms of are you doing mentorship and coaching? With, I think we mentioned it. Give us some more information on that as well. What?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I do organizational consulting. So where I'll come into a company and really help them, understand where they're going, what it's going to take to get there, getting everybody sort of on the same page, interviewing everybody in the company and really sort of bringing structure. Yeah. I do some of that. I do some one-on-one coaching with CEOs.
Yeah.
Often just most of them are just people who just need an ear, an educated ear to bounce ideas off of, and so I do that quite a bit.
Brilliant. Is there a common theme that you're coming across? Sorry to cut across you, Ryan, but with these mentorship and coaching type of things, I'm seeing a lot of salesy type coaching, and it's gone into this whole marketing sort of how to the Grant Cardone nearly of how to do construction. I was like,
So to be honest, I hardly even market the services. I have a network of people who know me, and I get referred a lot. And so I don't want to work with people that I can't add value to. It's just like all the rest of my businesses. I'm here to add value, and if I work for somebody and they say that they did get value, I'll give you your money back, because it'd be a waste of both of our time.
Yeah, so I'm taking it by that. Then you probably go in and do your own version of a gap analysis on the business, and then go back and say, well, here's the touch points I think you need to ramp up or ramp down. Is it something? And you've
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, before I said I'm a structure person, so I typically can look at the structure. I'm also really good at identifying like where people should be as opposed to where they are. And so once you start interviewing people and understanding, what do you think why are you here? What is your goal here? What is the company's goal? And everybody's like, well, we're here to do the thing that we do. And it's like, yeah, okay. So that doesn't, just doing the thing doesn't get you fired up to come to work every day. And so like understanding like, what are we trying to accomplish? Like I just finished one with an environmental company, and everybody was very into saving the planet, but they didn't actually have goals that were aligned with saving the planet. Everything was monetary goals, but everybody was like caught up on this idea. Like, so it was like, we want to hit $10 million in revenue. But yet at the same time, they're like, well, we want to save the planet. And so we were able to restructure everything to a point where we could connect the finances to carbon capture. And then we can track the carbon capture. How much carbon will we have to capture in order to hit 10 million in revenue? Let's watch the carbon. That way people got really excited and on the same page. And so things like that, just getting people aligned.
And I think that's very powerful that you said that, because I would see a lot of companies probably have a great idea, dive straight into the idea, and then the business plan is something that just keeps on tripping along with them, rather than actually having a solid business plan at the start, with the market research done, with the identified USP of the business, and then the execution plan. Whereas, you can see companies where they just sort of say, oh, this would be a great idea. And then before they know it, they're knee deep into the financials and into the risk of actually trying to live this so-called solution. And then the solution becomes, the ugly child of the family, because, oh my God, what do we have to do in here? Why did we even start this in the first place?
Well, yeah, and also a lot of companies will, with all good intention, will say, well, we want to double the size of our business. We go, okay, how are we going to do that? And then they say, well, we should do X, Y, Z. And they go, okay, great, break. Nobody's accountable. Nobody's being held to it. No, there's not like a step-by-step, like there's no roadmap to get there. It's just sort of like, we just want to be there. And so helping people be accountable in a roadmap, like working in that direction, like that is, it's just about action. People love to talk, but, getting people to act is a whole different story. And so that's where everything I do is about action. What is the smallest step we can take right now in the room to make this start happening? And it's funny. I spend quite a bit of time. I volunteer with the prisons. And so I go into prisons for guys that are about to get out, and I help them with soft skills and otherwise. And then once they're out, we have a program that's like an entrepreneur and training program. And we teach them how to start a business. And we do it where it's exactly the same thing. What is the minimum thing you can do right now to start moving forward? Meaning, if you say you're a window cleaner, you don't need to buy a window truck. You don't need to hire your employees. You don't need to set up a corporate structure. You need to wash windows. Let's get you a rag and a spray bottle and have you go knock on a door. And like, it's all about starting. And you see this across from the guys that are just getting out of prison to the CEOs of company, where there's just this, like, they just overthink everything. And it's like, no, we just we have to get momentum going. It's like a flywheel.
Yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it, because they're caught in the minutiae of talk shops, and there's nothing actually getting done or achieved, and there's no metrics, and there's no exit. As me and you had talked earlier offline, was, you should have an exit plan, even if you don't want an exit plan. There should be some sort of a finite model at the end of where you're going.
Well, that's that. Well, I told you before, I don't ever build a business to sell it. I often end up selling it. But when you build your business and you structure it correctly, and it's providing for you and you enjoy it, like all the parts you hate are now outsourced. And then somebody comes and offers you a 3x, multiple on your profits. You're like, hey, stick it. What am I doing 3 years? I'm hardly working with this business, and I like what I do. So like when you structure a business like a really, really solid business, it's something you love. And so I've dealt this with CEOs too. I had a guy come to me and say, I can't deal with it anymore. I want to sell my business. I'm sick of it. And so I said, okay, well, before you sell it, let's look at it. And like, who are the people you're missing? What are the systems? And so we went through. It took about 6 months to pull the whole business together to where it was, functioning well, because that's what a buyer wants. They want a business that runs well. So let's make it do that, so that when we go out and look for a buyer, they go, oh, this is something I want to own.
It's ready.
And then once you get to that point, he was like, actually, I don't really mind it anymore. And he ended up keeping the business.
I love it. Brilliant. I'm going to throw a few curveballs at you, because I like throwing curveballs.
Okay.
And you're probably not entirely prepared for this. So from your military background, I hope I don't give you PTSD or something like that from the questions. So favorite book and why?
Probably, I'd say Atomic Habits is one of my favorites, because it's very foundational. I probably read that book once a year, just a reminder of setting really good habits. I think habits free you. Yeah. When I have really good habits, I'm healthier, I'm happier. And so there's a lot in there. James Clear, and I also love his email. He does like the 3-2-1 emails you get a weekly. So of all of them, I'd say that's probably my favorite sort of foundational book.
What's the 3-2-1 email?
So he goes through, and it's like 3 quotes from others, 2 from me, and one takeaway or something like that. You can go to his website, I think it's jamesclear.com, and sign up for it. But they're really insightful. It's quotes. It's, it's just questions to think about. Very, very thoughtful. Yeah. So I really enjoy that,
Okay. Tell us something about you, Ryan, that the normal person wouldn't recognize or know about you. Something that is something interesting about you that not many people would identify with.
An
interesting fact.
I'm a really boring person.
He's been to Bosnia. He's a really boring person.
I really appreciate the simpler things, I guess. And maybe it wasn't like that when I was younger, but I'm everybody's daytime friend. If you're looking for a guy to go hang out and like have fun with and go to bars and restaurants or concerts, I'm not that. I'm the guy you call when you want to grab a cup of coffee or go on a walk or something. And so that's sort of who I am and who people know I am, but it's usually not the assumption people always seem to think that.
Because some people might think you're like this intense, serial entrepreneur, whereas in fact, no, I'm chilled out.
I'm actually
I'm happy in my skin.
Very chill. Yeah, exactly.
Favorite destination for a holiday and why?
Ooh, so I don't like vacation. I love travel. So I've done some pretty fun trips over the years, whether it's, spent some time in Russia traveling, over the Trans-Siberian Expressway out to the Yekaterinburg, Perm was amazing. I spent months down in Argentina traveling around down there. I spent months in Chile. I spent some time in Colombia. Matter of fact, did my honeymoon in Colombia, in Bogota, and then went back in Medellin not too long ago, several years ago. Was able to connect up with Roberto Escobar, Pablo Escobar's brother, and interviewed him about some crypto stuff he was doing. I like really interesting sort of stuff. Running with the bulls in Pamplona, or just do interesting things. Yeah. But I have a trip coming up next month. We're going to Hawaii, and I'm like, ugh. I know my kids are going to have fun on the beach, but it just sounds so boring. What are we going to do? Sit on the beach? Sit around a pool? It's terrible.
Okay, and the final one, I promise I'm not gonna hug the floor on it. Your favorite car or vehicle and why? It doesn't have to be a car; it can be a vehicle.
So I have a BMW GS 1250 that I've got geared up for off road. I did a couple of years ago. I went to Alaska and did 2,000 miles overland adventure on it was a rental bike, but it was through the old Denali Highway, through these rivers and up these hills, and elk running alongside you. I mean, it was just epic. And so when I came back home, I told my wife, I said, if shit hits the fan here in LA, we got to get out of town. We need to have a vehicle that we could escape on. And so I got to buy this motorcycle. And so I got myself that bike, and I got it all geared up with the big old tires and my saddlebags. And so it's my doomsday vehicle.
It's your
the wife on, the two kids and the dog and the saddlebags, and we'll go. So that's my favorite. Yeah.
Ryan, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. I'm so sorry for disturbing your 7 o'clock in the morning routine and having to come and listen to me and obviously tell us all of your successes and failures and all the good stuff and bad stuff about construction. But you're an absolute gem, and we love what you're doing. If people want to come and find you and have a talk to you, are you open to conversations regardless of location? Where can we get you?
Yeah. Just check out ryancrownhome.com. I'm there, or LinkedIn, Ryan Crown. But Ryan, it's a pretty unique name, so you can find me pretty much anywhere. I'm happy to have some conversations.
The book, obviously, The Hustle Trap, is on Amazon. We'll put a link in the show notes. Website wise, is there one particular website that gets directly to you as an individual, or just go to dirtmatch.com and say, hey, is Ryan around?
Yeah, I would get the message, but really my website, to the ryancrownhome.com.
ryancrownhome.com.
That's the easiest way to get me.
Ryan, thank you very much. We really appreciated your time, and we look forward to seeing your success in the future.
All right, Gavin, that was fun. I'm going to go on a walk.